What if I told you there are 4 root problems that, if addressed, would balance the current state of Overwatch 2 without having to return to 6v6? Hello there everybody and welcome to the Abyss. Overwatch 2 has a lot of problems, this is no secret. Yet ironically enough, I believe the fundamental issue that has plagued the game since its inception lies in their process of identifying what problems need solving. After all, it's not wise to solve for a problem before identifying what the problem is. However, it is far worse to start solving for an incorrect problem. What do I mean by an incorrect problem? Well, there are several examples I could point to. However, for the sake of this video, I'm going to focus on what caused my initial frustration. That's right, the problem which pushed me down a rabbit hole so deep I've spent a month researching various perspectives, writing this script, learning how to edit videos, losing sleep, rewriting this script, even getting sick and losing my voice. Yes, I have a problem, I know. But focusing on Overwatch's problems, this was all in order to analyze and respond to the developer's take titled Opening Up the Conversation on 5v5 versus 6v6. Now, before continuing, let me not waste your time. As stated earlier, I've conducted a decent amount of research on what has basically become an exposition and thesis on the state of the game, attempting to condense and articulate all of the problems within Overwatch and boiling them down into a short video that can be reviewed by developers and content creators alike for constructive feedback has proven quite difficult. What an understatement. While I think I've missed the perfect timing for this video, the reason I feel making it is still necessary is because I believe there are a few overlooked problems that, if addressed, could bridge the gap between the people on both sides of the 5v5 versus 6v6 discussion. For the sake of your time and my sanity, the rationale behind my conclusions, detailed analysis for why the problems are problems, and in-depth specifics on how to solve the problems, including numbers for each change, will be explained in future videos. Cop-out statement, I know, but for this video, I really want to focus on giving an overview both on the overlooked problems and what I believe would be an adequate solution before the content becomes too outdated. With all of this said, what are the problems Overwatch 2 suffers from? To find this out, I've conducted a 5-wise approach by admittedly piggyback writing off of several polls run by different content creators and their communities. Additionally, I've watched days worth of rants and discussions from and between high and low tier players alike, watching countless here's the problem and here's the solution type of videos. Finally, and most importantly in my opinion, I've just been continuously playing the game, something I've been doing since Season 2 of Overwatch 1. From this, I think I've come up with 4 root problems that cause most of the disagreements between members of the community and skew theirs and the developers' perspectives when proposing changes for the game. Maybe some of these points are made out of my ignorance, but that is even more reason for me to make this video. I've tried to mitigate my perspective from influencing this analysis as much as possible, but let me be clear, no matter what I do, there will be some bias that will show through. Factors such as the types of people who'd be most likely to answer those polls mentioned before, the types of players I've watched make their rants, and my own playstyle and grievances will inevitably impact my results. My genuine wish though, while making this video, is to simply voice my opinions on this topic and learn where the fault in my logic lies. Keeping these thoughts in mind, what are these 4 root problems? From what I can see, Overwatch's problems stem from the following: its lack of philosophy on the identities for each of the roles and hero designs, no common set of terminology or interactions between the heroes and the environments, balancing and designing based off of incorrect or incomplete data, and probably the most ignored but core root problem, the number of heroes in each role. While there are reasons why some aspects of these problems need to exist in order to maintain the identity of Overwatch, there are other aspects that can be addressed. So, how do we deal with these root problems without causing new ones or losing what makes Overwatch so great? Great question. Well, aside from that being an impossible task, I'm not that egotistical. I believe most problems stated by the community can be resolved. Yes, I would even go so far as to say there are ways of balancing heroes such as Roadhog, Lifeweaver, Sombra, Maga, Widowmaker, Hanzo, Illari, and Kiriko. Please note though that, in my opinion and at this point of the game balance, the solution has to be wide-sweeping and complex or intricate. Yes, the phrasing here does sound strange, I know. The reason I'm stating this is due to the insane number of indirect changes that will occur when changing any individual aspect of the game. While indirect changes are inevitable, the degree to which they affect other aspects of the game is in part due to the number of unique interactions they have, hence why this became one of the root problems stated above. Properly defining these interactions will not only ease the experience for new players, but will also improve the process for designing new heroes. I state this as justification for why my solution will need to be broken up into 2 parts. Part 1 will attempt to fully define the philosophies for each of the roles and how the abilities and map/game modes should be generically designed. The second part will be the actual steps that need to be done to the game balance at a macro scale while following the generalizations provided in Part 1. These changes will be done in an effort to directly address the first and fourth root problems while simultaneously setting up the game to address the second and third root problems. Note, the how of how the heroes meet these philosophies can vary greatly, but the idea is to give a general outline of what the roles should be designed for. Overlap can be fine, but we must be careful not to allow for too many synergies of problematic buffs and debuffs. After all, why choose a hero or heroes with a healthy gameplay style when there are problematic ones that are more fun to play or provide more inherent value? And yes, these will be overgeneralizations and my opinions on what would be a healthy philosophy to follow. If any content creator or creators would like to debate, adjust, disagree, or workshop what I have below, let me know down in the comments below. With all that said, I spent enough time setting this up. Let's get started by defining the philosophies, beginning with ability design. Abilities should generically be designed to promote gameplay in line with the hero's role philosophy listed below, while rewarding skill-based interactions. The concept of an ability should aim to be a reusable skill that requires timing and resource management to be used effectively, moving away from strong abilities on long cooldowns. Abilities should be controlled by the player, meaning the game should aim to reduce the amount of auto-aim, autonomous, and/or AoE damaging/healing abilities available. Reasoning here is to promote gameplay that feels fairer to play against while maintaining how fun abilities are to use. This is done by increasing the reward for landing skill-based abilities through buffing allies or oneself and debuffing or displacing enemies. Abilities should be more dynamic than static, as static abilities cause stagnation in gameplay which feels worse in a PvP FPS format inherently. This can be seen by how Torb, Symmetra, Orisa, Bastion, and even Sombra have had their kits constantly be reworked, moving their abilities in a more dynamic direction. With the abilities oversimplified, let's begin the role philosophies with the most challenging role, tanks. Tanks should have a medium damage output. Their abilities should be designed with a focus on mitigating damage, either by blocking incoming damage or punishing the enemies for dealing damage. Tanks should have kits that apply debuffs to enemies within zones, deny or discourage rotations through specific areas, and allow the tanks to claim space through controlling the movement of enemies. Tanks can have self-sustain through small self-buffs or bursts of overhealing as to alleviate the healing pressure on their supports and encourage independent gameplay. These self-buffs and overhealing can be applied to allies, but to a much smaller degree, being careful about preventing the tanks from providing too much indirect value. Tanks should be able to use their HP or HPs as a resource to manage while engaging the enemy. In general, the goal for tanks should be to apply pressure to and mitigate incoming pressure from enemies while synergizing with other allies, enabling them to make plays and secure kills. They should also be able to create and capitalize on mistakes made by enemies who overextend or overcommit through skillful use of their abilities. Next, let's talk about supports. Supports should be designed to have low damage output. They will compensate this with kits that revolve around abilities which buff allies, debuff enemies, and enable their team to take engagements and execute disengagements. They will be able to provide consistent and targeted healing to allies. Support can have small amounts of self-sustain, allowing them to dodge the engagements and duels from incoming enemies through skill-based abilities in the form of displacement, soft crowd control, or selfish mobility. In general, supports will alleviate the incoming pressure onto allies by enabling their kits through applying buffs and healing while removing debuffs. Meanwhile, they should dissuade enemies from applying pressure or holding space by reducing their kits through skill-based application of debuffs or by removing buffs. Finally, we have DPS. DPS should have the most damage output potential in the game, the trade-off being the limited utility they have compared to every other role. Primary utility DPS will provide is limiting the amount of healing enemies can receive and revealing their locations. The goal of DPS should be to apply pressure both to objectives and the lives of the enemy heroes. They will do this by engaging in duels that allow the team to gain the numerical advantage and follow up on opportunities generated by the other roles. To end this section, we have a brief philosophy on designing maps and game modes. Maps should have geometry intentionally designed to promote and dissuade certain styles of gameplay. Game modes should have objectives that promote and dissuade different playstyles. Heroes should feel more viable on certain maps and game modes and less viable on others. This is a good enough generalization for this video. I have more to state here, however, I will save those thoughts for another video. I'm primarily stating this philosophy here to emphasize the role maps and objectives have on determining a hero's overall health. Now that we have generalized what we are designing for, let's get a little crazy. Keep in mind, these next changes are intended to occur simultaneously. If broken apart, I admit they each have several downsides which are not helpful or healthy to the game. Together though, they address the current problems while making up for the issues seen before. With that said, the first overall change I would implement would be to move half of the DPS roster to another role. Following are my suggestions for who should change and what role they should change to. Bastion, Junkrat, Mei, Reaper, and Venture should be moved to the tank role. Soldier 76, Sombra, Symmetra, and Torb should be moved to the support role. The next change I would implement would be to the overall format. Instead of a tank DPS support role lock of 1-2-2, I would change this to a 2-1-2 format, meaning 2 tanks, 1 DPS, and 2 supports. Afterwards, in order to bring supports more in line with the new philosophy, I would adjust the support's passive. Supports will no longer be able to headshot, but in turn will deal more damage to overhealth, barriers, shields, and heroes under the damage reduction buff. Finally, pending playtests of the above changes, the overall damage and healing in the game must be monitored and lowered to counteract potential power creep. More on this change in a future video. Now, before you click off of this video, please keep in mind none of the heroes in the game will remain exactly as they are now. As stated earlier, this change is complicated, as the intention is to solve the problems 5v5 created when it changed from 6v6, while simultaneously addressing the problems never addressed in 6v6. Some of which the new format intended to solve, but didn't. All I'm asking before you make your final judgment against my proposed solution is to please watch my upcoming video on how I would specifically change not only the above 9 former DPS heroes, but also several other problematic heroes in the game. I believe implementing my proposed changes aimed at adjusting heroes to be more in line with the new philosophies will fix most of the common complaints I've seen regarding problematic heroes or synergies in the game. So, while there are still more ideas to cover, sadly they cannot fit into this video. Please keep in mind, I am not the best player, nor am I claiming these changes will solve all of the problems Overwatch has with gameplay balance or competitive integrity. This video and the follow-up videos are just a passion project of mine, born out of my frustrations from the direction and stagnation of the discourse within the community, especially for the past few months or so. The purpose of this video is to verbalize an alternative perspective on the problems the Overwatch community are currently struggling with, and to propose some potential solutions in regards to the director's take. One thing to note, as shown by history, is that for every solution proposed, a new problem will arise. 5v5 is not a perfect format. It would be incredibly disingenuous or demonstrate one's lack of foresight to say so. I don't think it's the number of players, however, that causes the problems the community has experienced. Problems Overwatch 2 are facing are indeed complex. It is precisely for this reason we need to take a step back and keep asking what all of the contributing factors are and why they are a problem before making blanket statements about the direction the game needs to go. One final note before I wrap this up: if we have truly explored all of the potential options available to us in 5v5, but the community and developers both agree that 6v6 is still necessary to improve the gameplay loop and promote a healthy playstyle, then hey, I'm not gonna complain. I'm just here to have fun and propose solutions people might not have thought of yet. That's why I've been playing since Season 2 of Overwatch 1, and honestly why I'll probably continue playing no matter what changes get implemented. With all of that said, it's now time for my least favorite part of the video, where I have to do something I loathe doing: begging for help. Please share this video with your favorite Overwatch content creator. I'm looking for as much feedback on the concepts discussed both in this and subsequent videos as possible, regardless of how big of a mistake that may or may not be. As mentioned back in the agenda section, my goal is to voice my opinions on this topic and learn where the faults in my logic are. As long as you are focused on the concepts I'm proposing and not trying to attack the messenger, I'm open to feedback and would love to discuss this further. I wouldn't have spent a month making these videos otherwise. After all, having more input or criticism, both constructive and non-constructive, helps paint a better picture of where the faults are with these changes. Understanding these faults will allow us to address them prior to their implementation and save us from having to live with them for the next year and a half. But that feedback won't come unless more people see this video, so please share this with who you can. If you are a workshop content creator who wants to try replicating some of my hero balance ideas, let me know down in the comments below. In the near future, I will post a video stating what I would change about each hero, down to how much HP, armor, and shields each hero should have. And I'd love to beta test some of these new concepts. Alright, time for a series of ifs. If you liked what I had to say and want to hear more, let me know by liking this video. If you want to be notified of when my next video drops, supposedly hitting that bell down below will help with that. If you have thoughts on Overwatch's current state or any ideas about fixing the game, or simply didn't like my ideas, please tell me why by mentioning it down in the comments below, or I don't know, make a scathing response video. Thank you all so much for your attention on this extraordinarily long video, and until next time, remember to stay safe and don't get lost in the abyss.